Making of propellant grain starts with one of my favorite inventions. I'm rather proud of this one. It's taped paper. One takes ordinary typing paper, ordinary box tape, and tape some of it. Why would you imagine we're doing this? Well, because this propellant is somewhat sticky. We're going to be molding it in a little grain mold made out of cardboard. And if we just mold it on the cardboard, it's very likely to stick. We'll have a heck of a time getting it out of that tube. This serves as a mold liner. So I need to cut it the right length. I'm going to start, though, by just trimming it roughly off so I don't have to deal with that extra paper. And then I need to measure it. Since this is 1.5 inches long, that's our grain mold, by 1/2 inch inside diameter, we need this to be 1.5 inches wide. There's a Sharpie. Sharpie. 1.5 inches wide. A dot, and a line. We'll cut along that line. Then we'll want it to be about 2 inches long. It has to go all the way around the inside of this, plus just a little bit. 2 inches should give us one turnaround, plus a little bit of overlap. Let's go ahead and cut the 1.5 inch strip. Okay, then we'll measure this 2 inches long, or thereabouts. I'll go ahead and dot it since we're right there. In the end, if it's angled a bit, no big deal, so I'll just trim that off, eyeball it. So now, this little dealie gets rolled up with a tape side inside, inserted into the mold, and that way it makes a liner. When we mold the propellant, it will stick to that liner, but since it's plastic, it'll come off very easily. When we push this out of the mold, the grain will come out with the liner on it, which serves a dual purpose. It also keeps it from hitting the air and therefore from getting moist. So we have our mold assembled. This, by the way, is just a piece of our motor tubing, cut off 1.5 inches long, and I treat up the ends a little bit. And I painted it with red paint so we can tell the difference. To make this grain in the mold, I'm going to need my propellant, and within reaching distance. Okay, there it is. Well, it's been nicely warming here. Let's look at it. Yep, still there, still red. Just to be sure it's the right texture, and not too hot, not too cold, I'll scrape it up and mix it again. It's not a bad idea to do this before you start working with it for a couple of reasons. One is to make sure it's mixed. Secondly, to even out the temperature within it. Because as it heats in this pan, it's going to get hotter on the bottom than it does on the top. And you might be able to touch the top and pick it up with your fingers. That's not a problem. But the stuff on the bottom could stick to your fingers, and you're really bad news. Now notice I'm not wearing gloves now. I believe that at this point that's unnecessary. In fact, it's counterproductive in terms of safety. This stuff burns slow enough that if it ignited, you wouldn't have any trouble getting away from it. But the gloves get in the way, and they also absorb potassium nitrate, becoming flammable. So sometimes too much safety becomes unsafe, and this is one of those points. We're also going to want a little bit of mold liner, tape paper, to set our mold on. That will keep the propellant from sticking to this surface below. So now I want to get a little bit of propellant, and I'm going to use my cloth board to put it on first, just to make sure it's a good texture. We grab, a good wad, enough to fill this and a little more. Then we roll it into a little slug, and roll it and roll it. This works air out, and it makes sure the temperature is nice and even. Then I'm going to cut off, a little chunk, about 1/2 inch long, and drop it into the mold. Then pack it down. Now, I didn't think to bring a good rammer here. I happen to have a 3/16 inch brass rod, which I use for coring. That'll do for packing. But a wooden dowel works well. In fact, the wooden dowel might even be better because it won't absorb more heat. Oh, here's one. Here's a bamboo skewer, which I also use for coring. Pack it down. Let's do it one more time. So we want to fill this just about to the top with propellant. I'm going to zoom in so you can see that a little better. We need to make a hollow tube through the middle of this propellant slug. I'm going to turn it over so I'm working from the cooler end, and I'm going to use this wooden skewer. I've used several things for this. A brass rod, 1/8 inch brass rod, is a little bit too small. 3/16 inch brass rod is a little bit on the large side, although it works. This bamboo skewer is just a little smaller than 3/16. Let's call it 5/32, and it's just about the right size. So I'm going to start by poking it into the grain, making sure it's centered, and then I want it to go centered straight through. Trick for doing that: pick it up and rotate the dowel. and see how much it wobbles. Straighten out the wobble as you gradually twist and push the skewer through the propellant, kind of holding this end, otherwise you may push everything out all at once. Oops, getting kind of stiff here. Better hurry. I'm doing too much talking. Alright, as it pushes out, it makes a little cone on the other side. If you have fingernails, just dig it off with your fingernails. If you don't have fingernails, get a small sharp knife and trim around it with that. Having trimmed around it, we see, is it fairly well centered? It looks like it is. If not, you can kind of mash this towards the center and pack the propellant down around it. Okay, now to make sure this skewer doesn't get stuck, twist it. Twist it a few times. Twist, twist, twist. And when it feels like the propellant's getting a little bit solid, go ahead and twist the skewer out. Set that down and let it cool completely. Once it's cooled completely, that's our propellant grain.